Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Hello dear students, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another video from your channel AZ Chemistry for All. This is Mr. Muad. Before we start, thank you for sharing and subscribing for the channel, guys. The channel, please continue to share and subscribe and share it with your friends across the country so that hopefully they can benefit from these videos. And if you have any questions, you know how to contact me either in the comments section or as shown in the slide. Okay, so guys, we are starting a new lesson. This is module 60 lesson 2 from the Inspired Chemistry series, factors affecting chemical equilibrium. So we have been talking about chemical equilibrium, where we have a reversible reaction, and chemical equilibrium means الاتزان الكيميائي. Okay, it's like a balancing point where the concentrations of A and B, اللي هي products or reactants, stay constant. Okay, and we said that this one is the forward reaction, and this is called the reverse reaction. Okay, this is what we covered in the last lesson. So after this lesson, what should you be able to do? You should be able to describe how various factors affect chemical equilibrium. كيف عدة عوامل تؤثر على الاتزان الكيميائي. Explain how Le Chatelier's principle applies to equilibrium systems. So we will learn something called مبدأ Le Chatelier, that tells you what will happen to the equilibrium system if we disturb it using some factors. Okay, so in part 1 we will explain what we mean by Le Chatelier's principle, and we will predict and explain how changes in concentration affect the equilibrium of a closed system. Okay, so what happens when the equilibrium conditions change? This is what we will try to answer. Like a reaction is happening in a normal way, right? What would happen if we change the concentration of A? What would happen if we change the concentration of B? What will happen to the equilibrium system? شو اللي بيحصل للاتزان إذا غيرنا كميات ال A وال B? Okay? So this guy, Le Chatelier, he's a scientist. He came up with a principle, okay? And he proposed a principle in 1888. Okay, so what did he say? Le Chatelier's principle states that if stress is applied to a system at equilibrium, the system shifts in the direction that relieves the stress. يعني مبدأ Le Chatelier يقول إنه إذا في عامل من العوامل أثر على الاتزان الكيميائي، فإن الاتزان الكيميائي يذهب في الاتجاه الذي يزيح هذا العامل أو يخفف من تأثير هذا العامل. طبعا لما أتكلم shifts لأي اتجاه يعني التفاعل يذهب إلى جهة اليمين أو يذهب إلى جهة اليسار. Okay, this is what we mean. So what do we mean stress? Stress is any kind of change in a system that upsets or changes equilibrium. So stress can mean one of three things: changing concentrations اللي هم عندنا في الدروس في المحتوى اللي بناخذه الحين ان شاء الله. changing concentration نغير كميات النواتج والمتفاعلات. changing pressure or volume نغير من الضغط او الحجم. and changing temperature. Okay, so all of these are types of stress. We'll start with the first one, changing concentration. Another way to define Le Chatelier's principle is that الباب اللي تجيك من الريح نسده ونستريح. If we disturb the system, we try to remove this disturbance, okay? And we'll see how that happens. So, changing the concentration. So adjusting the concentrations of either the reactants or products puts stress on a system in equilibrium. يعني السيستم أو التفاعل لما يكون في اتزان، إذا غيرنا كميات النواتج أو المتفاعلات هذا يخرب التوازن، يخرب الاتزان، صح؟ So what should happen? So adding reactants when we add reactants, the number of collisions between molecules increase. Okay, and that upsets equilibrium. And the equilibrium will shift to the right because we are adding more reactants, so they will react together. So the forward reaction is going to become more dominant, so it will shift to the right عشان نخفض من الكمية اللي زودناها. احنا حطينا متفاعلات، كيف نتخلص من هالكمية اللي زودناها؟ ان احنا نستخدمها في التفاعل. So the equilibrium will shift to the right. If products are removed, the reaction also shifts to the right. يعني إذا شلنا النواتج أو قللناها، التوازن أو الاتزان يروح لجهة اليمين عشان يعوض الكمية اللي خسرناها من products, because the products are on the right side. Okay. If additional products are added, the reaction shifts to the left. لأنه إحنا ضفنا البرودكتس زودناها فنريد نخفض من هاي الزيادة فنستخدمها. So when we use it, the reaction will shift to the left. And these shifts are illustrated in the next slide, guys. So in the next slide, as you see, these are shown here. So assume we are talking about this reaction. This is our system. This is our system, or this is our reaction, okay? If we add a reactant, إذا ضفنا متفاعل فإحنا زودنا هاي الجهة. هاي الجهة صار وزنها أكثر. فإحنا نريد نخفف هذا الوزن. So the reaction or equilibrium will shift to the right. السهم اليمين بيكبر عشان نستخدم ال CO ونخفض كميتها. Okay? Same thing will happen if we remove a product. So if we remove a product, إحنا خفضنا كمية البرودكتس أو النواتج. فشو نسوي عشان نعوضها؟ لازم التفاعل يروح إلى جهة اليمين. The reaction should shift to the right so that we make more products because we removed it. So we want to make more. Okay? So if we remove a reactant, the reaction will shift to the left so that we make more reactants because we removed it. So we want to go back to the original state. And if we add more products, it's too much. That wasn't what equilibrium, that wasn't similar to the equilibrium state. So if we add the product, the reaction will shift to the left so that we use this product and we reduce it. عشان نخفض من هذا البرودكت اللي ضفناه. That's why it will shift to the left. So these conditions, if we add a reactant or remove a product, the reaction or the equilibrium will shift to the right. If we remove a reactant or add a product, the equilibrium will shift to the left. So read this question, stop the video and try to come back. Which of the following will shift the chemical equilibrium to the left? لجهة اليسار. So you know two things will do that. Adding products or removing reactants. So which one is that? Adding products. It's going to make the reaction shift to the left. Now adding a reactant or removing a product, these two will shift the reaction to the right. Adding a catalyst, nothing will happen. We'll see it at the end. Catalysts, they affect the rate or speed. يأثرون على السرعة، سرعة التفاعل مش على equilibrium. What is the result of removing a product from a reaction? So if we remove a product, the reaction or equilibrium should shift to the right. Okay? And that's it. That's it with part 1, guys. So part 1 كله ملخص في هاي السلايد. If you understand this, it doesn't matter what reaction they give you. يهم شو نوعية التفاعل اللي يعطونك. You will always be able to predict where would the equilibrium shift. Will it shift to the right or will it shift to the left? Okay? All right. Now we go to part 2. So part 2, we will predict and explain how changes in volume and pressure affect the equilibrium of a closed system. So what will happen to the equilibrium when we increase or change volume or pressure, and what will happen to the equilibrium when we change temperature. And before that, let's have a quick activity to remember. So you have this equilibrium. when an equilibrium shifts to the right, what happens to each of the following? إذا equilibrium shifts to the right, what will happen to the concentration of the reactants؟ يعني إذا التفاعل راح لجهة اليمين أو صار جهة اليمين أكثر، شو بيحصل للمتفاعلات؟ المفروض كميتها تقل ولا تزيد؟ إحنا قاعدين نستخدمهم. The reaction is moving to the right, so we are using them, so they should decrease, and the concentration of the products should increase. Okay? All right. For a reaction, 2SO2 plus O2 gives me 2SO3 at equilibrium. If we remove O2, what will happen? So guys, if we remove O2 اللي هي reactant, the reaction will shift to the left. صح؟ So كمية ال SO3 المفروض بتقل لأن احنا قاعدين نستخدمها، قاعدة تتفاعل وتروح لجهة اليسار. And the concentration of O2 and the concentration of SO2, they are increasing because we are making them, because the reaction shifts to the left. So you will notice that the concentration of SO2 increases and the concentration of SO3 decreases, like we talked about here. Okay? يعني هذا قاعد يقول لك شو الريزلتس أو شو ناتج لما equilibrium shifts to the left, what will happen. Okay? Alright. A liquid solvent for chlorine is poured into a flask in which the following reaction is at equilibrium. This is the reaction. Is this exothermic or endothermic? الهيت موجودة في النواتج, it is exothermic. How is the equilibrium affected when some of chlorine gas dissolves? So here is chlorine. So what does dissolve mean? Dissolves mean the Cl2 will decrease. So where will the reaction shift if the amount of Cl2 decreases, if we remove Cl2? So if we remove Cl2 اللي هي product, the reaction should shift to the right. لأن احنا شلنا من البرودكت فنريد نعوض الشيء اللي خسرناه, so the reaction will shift to the right to make more Cl2 عشان يعوض النقص في Cl2. Okay, so hopefully you understand, you now understand what do we mean by the changes in concentration and how it affects equilibrium. Okay, now when we talk about pressure and volume, guys, we talk about gases. Okay, very important, we talk about gases. So the pressure of a gas depends on its number of moles. يعني في علاقة طردية ما بين ضغط الغاز وما بين كمية المولات. Very important to remember. If the number of moles increases, the pressure will increase. If the number of moles decreases, the pressure will decrease. Okay? Another important rule is that pressure and volume have an inverse relationship. في علاقة عكسية ما بين البريشر والفوليوم. إذا قال لك إنه الفوليوم قل, volume decreases, it means pressure increases. إذا قال لك إنه الفوليوم increases, it means the pressure decreases. يعني في علاقة عكسية ما بين الفوليوم والبريشر, وفي علاقة طردية ما بين البريشر والنمبر of moles. Okay? So if we want to make a relationship between volume and moles, we say if the volume increases, إذا زاد الفوليوم, the moles will decrease, and if we decrease the volume, the moles will increase. In the space, well, it's the concentration, it's not the moles. It's about the concentration أو كمية المولات في حجم معين. Okay, so maybe you can skip this one. There's no need to talk about this one. Excuse me, but it will make sense when we relate it to pressure. Okay, all right. So what will happen if we change the volume and pressure? Have a look here at this reaction, guys. Very important to notice that volume and pressure affects gases only. So like when you have gases, if you have gases in the reactants and products then volume and pressure will affect them. إذا جينا نشوف هنا بنلاقي إنه here we have 1 mole of CO and 3 moles of H2. So total we have 4 moles of gases. And here we have 1 mole of CH4 and 1 mole of H2O, sorry. So the total number of moles is 2. فالمولات في النواتج أقل من عدد المولات الغازية في المتفاعلات. So in the above reaction, increasing pressure shifts the system to the right. Okay? Because it will produce less moles of gas. So remember, when I said increasing pressure, it is like increasing moles لأنه في علاقة طردية. فإحنا نريد نخفض هذا التأثير. We need to reduce the increase of moles. So we should go to the side that has less number of moles. Which side has less number of moles? The reactants or the products? The products. That's why the reaction is going to shift to the right. يعني إحنا لما زودنا الضغط عدد المولات كأننا زودنا عدد المولات. أوكي؟ فإحنا نريد نخفض هذا التأثير. فلازم إنه التفاعل يروح للجهة اللي فيها عدد مولات أقل. عدد المولات الأقل موجودة في جهة اليمين. عشان هيك الرياكشن is going to shift to the right. Okay? So, excuse me. This is a very important point. Changing the volume and or pressure of a system will shift the equilibrium. يعني the equilibrium is going to shift to the right or to the left. Only if the number of moles of gases in the reactants is different than the number of moles of gas in the products. So if I have 2A, G, and here I have 2B of G, this is 2 moles of gas, and this is 2 moles of gas, صح? Because they are equal, إذا غيرنا البريشر أو الفوليوم, nothing will happen because they are equal. But if I have 1 mole here, and I have 2 moles here, then if I change, because here I have 1 mole and here I have 2 moles, if I change pressure and volume in this reaction, then equilibrium is going to shift to right or left. ليش؟ لأن عدد المولات في اليمين لا يساوي عدد المولات في اليسار. Alright. If the number of moles is the same on both sides of the balanced equation, changes in pressure and volume have no effect on equilibrium. So that's what we talked about in the previous slide. When the volume of the reaction vessel is decreased, so when we say volume decreases, it's like pressure increases لأنه في علاقة عكسية ما بين الفوليوم والpressure. And when we say pressure increases, it's like we increased moles, right? That's why the equilibrium position will shift to the side that has fewer number of moles. بيروح للجهة اللي فيها عدد مولات أقل. Okay? So this is the figure that we saw. You can read the captions below the images. Alright. What is the effect on equilibrium of changing the volume and pressure of an equilibrium system if the number of moles of gas is the same for reactants and products? شو راح يحدث إذا غيرنا البريشر والفوليوم لتفاعل كيميائي في حالة اتزان وعدد المولات النواتج يساوي عدد مولات المتفاعلات الغازية? We said if the number of moles is the same, nothing is going to happen. Okay? We said that. For something to happen, the number of moles should be different. Okay? So guys, this is very important. Very important. هذا هو ملخص الكلام اللي تكلمنا عليه. If you understand it, you can solve any question. So, if the pressure increases, إذا قال لك في السؤال إذا زودنا البريشر, the equilibrium will shift to the side that has lower moles of gas. يعني إذا زودنا الضغط فالإكوليبريم is going to shift على حسب اليمين أو اليسار. وين؟ أي واحدة منهم؟ الجهة اللي فيها عدد مولات أقل. Same thing will happen when they say volume decreases لأن قلنا علاقة عكسية ما بين الفوليوم والبريشر. فإذا قال لك volume decreases هي نفسها pressure increases. Now if the pressure decreases يعني إذا خفضنا الضغط the equilibrium will shift to the side with the highest number of moles. الإكوليبريم بيروح إلى الاتجاه اللي عندها أقل عدد مولات. أوكي؟ سواء اليمين أو اليسار على حسب التفاعل اللي معطينك في السؤال. Same thing will happen if the volume increases. We said إنه في علاقة عكسية ما بين الفوليوم والبريشر. So same thing will happen when the volume increases. Let's test this here, guys. So explain how decreasing the volume of the reaction vessel affects each equilibrium. So decreasing volume هي نفسها increasing pressure. صح؟ وإحنا قلنا if we increase pressure أو we decrease volume the equilibrium will shift to the side that has lower number of moles. يعني الجهة اللي فيها أقل عدد مولات. Here we have 2 moles. And here 1 and here we have 2. So in total في ال left side عندنا 3 moles وفي ال right side we have 2 moles. So احنا قلنا increasing pressure is going to shift to the side with the lower number of moles. مين الجهة اللي عندها أقل عدد مولات؟ جهة اليمين. So the reaction shifts to the right. لأن عدد المولات في اليمين أقل. And all of these are gases. احنا نحسب بس مولات الغازات. إذا في solid ما نحسبها، إذا في liquid ما نحسبها. If there is aqueous we don't count it. H2 and Cl2, here 2. So here 1 and here 2. So in total here we have 2 moles and here we have 2 moles. So what should happen? The moles are equal. So nothing will happen لأن عدد المولات متساوي. Okay? That's why nothing is going to happen. Okay, guys? Alright. Now we go to the last part. Okay? And that's changes in temperature. So changing the temperature changes the equilibrium position. Okay? If heat is added to a system, the equilibrium shifts in the direction in which the heat is used up. Any temperature change results in a change in K equilibrium. Okay? So remember, K equilibrium changes with changing temperature. فإذا غيرنا درجة الحرارة ال K equilibrium is going to change. Okay? So guys, I want you to think about this like the concentration. Okay? So if you have an endothermic reaction, the heat plus A plus B gives me C plus D. So if I increase temperature, it's like I increase heat. And if I decrease temperature, الحرارة درجة الحرارة, it's like I decrease heat. فإحنا لما نتكلم عن endothermic reaction خلينا نعتبر هذا كأنه A and B. Let's consider heat being like a reactant, كأنها متفاعل نفس ال A وال B. Okay? If I increase the heat, the reaction should shift to the right عشان أستخدم هاي الهيت اللي زودناها. That's why it will shift to the right when I increase temperature. If I decrease temperature, it's like I decreased heat, يعني خفضت من الهيت. The reaction is going to shift to the left عشان يعوض النقص اللي حصل في الهيت. Okay? Now, if I have an exothermic reaction, إذا عندي reaction exothermic يعني الهيت موجودة في النواتج. If I increase the temperature, it's like I'm increasing heat. فعشان أخفض هاي الزيادة, the reaction will shift to the left. Okay? and if I decrease the temperature it's like I decreased heat يعني قاعد أخفض من الهيت. فكيف أعوض هذا النقص؟ The reaction should shift to the right. So the key to understand here نعتبر إنه الهيت كأنها متفاعل أو ناتج. It's like a reactant or a product. Okay? If you reduce it, it will shift to its side. If you increase it, it will shift to the opposite side. Okay? So that's what happens when you change temperature for endothermic and exothermic reaction. العكس يحصل لهم هم الاثنين. So this is very important to remember that any temperature change results in a change in K equilibrium. Okay? Very important. This is the last part of the lesson guys. Catalysts اللي هي الحفازات أو المحفزات. It's like enzymes guys. It's like enzymes. So catalysts speeds up the reaction. يعني الكاتاليست يأثر على سرعة التفاعل. The rate goes up. But it does equally on both directions. يعني التفاعل الأمامي والتفاعل الخلفي يتسارعون بنفس الدرجة أو المعدل. A catalyzed reaction reaches equilibrium more quickly but with no change in the amount of product formed. So, using a catalyst does not affect equilibrium. يعني إذا استخدمنا catalyst أو محفز ما يأثر على equilibrium. It only affects the speed. يعني يأثر على سرعة التفاعل. إذا استخدمنا محفز يسرع لي من التفاعل لكن ما يأثر على عملية الاتزان. Okay? Which of the following is not true of catalysts? So they speed up the reactions. This is true. They are used in industrial reactions. This is true. They are used to maximize efficiency. يعني يزود فعالية التفاعل. This is true لأنه بيخليها أسرع. They increase amount of product form. This is wrong. So this will be our answer. Okay? Because this is not true. نفس ما قلنا في السؤال. الحفاز استخدام الكاتاليست ما يأثر على كميات المتفاعلات أو النواتج. It does not affect that. Okay? بس يسرع لي من التفاعل ويستخدم في الصناعات ويزيد من فعالية التفاعل. And this is a key summary guys for what we covered so far. You can have a look here. Okay, هذا general reaction. يقول لك متى بيروح لجهة اليمين ومتى بيروح لجهة اليسار. Okay, هذا السمري لكل الشيء اللي أخذناه. Okay. Alright guys, thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. This is a very easy lesson for you to get marks on in the exam, as long as you understand متى بيروح لجهة اليمين ومتى بيروح لجهة اليسار. Okay? Alright guys, thank you very much. Please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and if you have any questions, you know how to contact me. So take care and wish you all the best.